Today I'm going to start the process of making homemade sauerkraut. There's lots of different ways to do sauerkraut, I guess. The way I do it is called Lacto-Fermentation. And that is something that's easy to do on the farm, especially if you have a dairy cow, because you have lactose in the milk. The liquid whey is when you take milk and let it separate into basically a curd in the whey underneath. The liquid whey contains lactose. It also has vitamins, protein, minerals, and little traces of fat. To produce cheese, rennet, or an edible acid is added to heated milk. This makes the milk coagulate or curdle, separating the milk solids for the curds and the liquid whey. Sweet whey is the byproduct of that kind of cheese, whereas acid whey is what I'm going to be making today. Acid whey is when I basically just take some milk and I pour it into a quart jar like this, and I'm just going to set that up on a counter in my kitchen, and I'm just going to leave it there for a few days, and I'll show you the progress of how it changes. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to be using. It's called sour whey, or the byproduct of an acid coagulated cheese. Some examples of lacto-fermented foods would include fermented milks like yogurt and kefir, I think, meats, sourdough bread, olives, sauerkraut, kimchi, and pickled vegetables. During lacto-fermentation, lactic acid bacteria break down the carbs into lactic acid and carbon dioxide. This creates an acidic, low-oxygen environment that encourages the growth of good bacteria and prevents the growth of other microorganisms that you don't want. These bacteria may contribute to health in a manner similar to that of probiotics, supporting gut and immune function. Lacto-fermentation is said to increase the bioavailability of foods, improve heart and brain health, and it has anti-inflammatory, cancer-fighting, immune-boosting, anti-diabetic, and anti-obesity benefits. Canning uses heat to cook food and kill harmful bacteria, including the beneficial ones, whereas lacto-fermentation uses good bacteria to prevent the growth of harmful organisms. Okay, our raw milk that's been sitting out for a couple days is finally turned to curds and whey. So I'm going to get this down, preferably without shaking it or dropping it on my head. Bring it down here. So you can see this yellow fluid here is the whey, and this clump up here is the curd. The curd, for me, has no value for what I want to do, so I'm just going to pull that out and feed it to the chickens. They'll enjoy it, and it's mostly like oily fat and milk protein down here. So anyway, but then I'll end up with a nice whey, which actually lasts in the fridge, I think maybe forever. I'm not sure. This is a live probiotic right now, so this is really awesome stuff. It's very healthy, and that's actually what's going to turn our sauerkraut from just mushy cabbage bits to a live probiotic food that will be good for our digestion. Okay, to make homemade sauerkraut, we're going to start with this beautiful head of purple cabbage that I found at the grocery. They didn't have any green. Normally I make green sauerkraut, but you can use purple too. It just has a kind of a funny gray color when it's all said and done. And we're going to go ahead and cut this just into wedges that will fit into my food processor. Now you can just slice this finely with your knife. That'll work too, but I'm lazy, so I'm going to use the tools that are on my counter. Beautiful, so colorful. So I pretty much doubled this recipe because I figure this is a little more than a small or medium cabbage. It's a fairly good sized cabbage. So I doubled the caraway, doubled the whey, and doubled the salt. Next thing I'm going to do is add those ingredients to my cabbage, but I'm going to use a much bigger bowl. This one. And so here's 8 tablespoons of whey. Just pour that on there. 2 tablespoons of caraway seeds, just whole caraway seeds. And 2 tablespoons of salt. And this is actually a mixture of kosher salt and sea salt. Alright. Now we get to beat this stuff up. And that's kind of fun. I take my trusty pusher, pushes stuff through, and it's just kind of a mallet, and I just start smashing this. And because I use a food processor, it starts to juice up a lot faster than if I had done this by hand. Okay, now you can see that it's kind of chewed up and pulverized. It's a little bit sloppy. We want it to be kind of wet. We're trying to release the juices from the little bits of cabbage and mix those with the whey that we put in there. So once we get to this point, we're going to take a quart bowl, or a quart glass, and we're going to fill the quart jar here with our cabbage. Get it to a certain point here, about like that. And we're going to use our tamping thing here to kind of press it down in there. Our goal is to pack it in there. What we want is we want the cabbage to be a firm little disc at the bottom and all this juice to sit on top. That's how we created an environment that the bacteria can do what it's supposed to do properly. We want to fill this no closer than about 1 inch from the top, because it will grow just a little bit. Alright, so there we go. We've got our 2 jars of baby sauerkraut, I guess. Back in the old days, they would just put this in a big pickling jar and kind of put some weights on it, a plate with some weights on it, and just let it do its thing, and then scoop into the jar and eat it, put the lid back on, or the weights back on, and just leave it, and it would last a very long time. What we're going to do instead, I'm going to wipe the edges of the top off. We're going to go ahead and put lids on. Now these will go into a cupboard in my bathroom, basically just underneath the sink, where they will stay for 3 days. You can eat it after 3 days. It's basically got the right idea, but it will last a very, very long time. And I find the flavor improves with the longer it sits there. I'm not even a big fan of sauerkraut, but I really enjoy homemade sauerkraut. I think it's delicious. My favorite thing to put it on is homegrown pork chops. It's just fantastic. And I feel good serving it to my family because it's so healthful. One of the last things I'll do is I will label the sauerkraut with the date that it was made, so that I can kind of keep track. Not that it really matters that much, because when I was looking in the cupboard, here's one that I made in 2015, so it's almost 5 years old. And it's just not been at fridge temperature, just room temperature. That gray color is actually kind of common when it gets that old. You can, if it bothers you, you can scrape it off. You can just stir it in. As long as it hasn't been touching the metal lid, it's not a problem. And it gets soft. Get some in here that looks more normal. Oh, it smells so good. You can see, maybe, I don't know if it'll focus. Anyway, it's got a nice texture to it. You can see the little caraway seeds are in there. Let me taste it real quick. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Has a very strong, yum, sauerkraut flavor, but not gross like the stuff at the stores. It's not, I don't know, I don't like sauerkraut from the stores. But this stuff is so delicious. My family loves it. I'm shocked my kids love it. It's kind of surprising because it's a very strong flavor. But it's really good on hot dogs and all kinds of foods. Sometimes we just put it on the side dish, just kind of as an immune booster, probiotic additive, just to kind of make sure our intestines are all doing good. But you can't go wrong. I hope you guys will try this recipe and see how it works out for you. It's definitely worth it. So here's that jar of 5-year-old sauerkraut that I found in the cupboard, and just to prove that I actually ate it. I can't tell you how good it is. It looks so gross, but it tastes so good. So, unless it's moldy or oddly bubbly or something weird, it's safe to eat. This stuff is pretty proven over the ages. People have been making sauerkraut and keeping it in their back porch for hundreds of years, right? So, I'd like to know how your guys' sauerkraut experiments turn out. If you go ahead and decide to give this a try, super easy. Not that many ingredients, not that much work, gigantic mess. However, the mess cleans up really easy because most of it you just rinse off and put the stuff away. So it's not that big a deal, but I'm pretty sure I'll be finding cabbage bits all over this kitchen for quite a while from now.